Get Rich Education is brought to you by Narada Real Estate, the Real Asset Investor, and Highlands Residential Mortgage.
Are you on track to achieve your financial goals? Income-producing real estate is the most historically proven way to accumulate wealth and has created more financial freedom than any other means. Narada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best turnkey cash flow rental properties. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly income. Get your free strategy session with our knowledgeable investment counselors at noradarealestate.com. That's NORADA realestate.com.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Hey, welcome to Get Rich Education, episode 125. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, back in the United States today after a 2-week foreign trip and back to help you build your wealth. Today, we're talking about how you can create cash flow, a passive income stream by owning agricultural real estate with your own agricultural parcels that are individually titled to you. You receive regular cash flow checks from the sale of the agricultural harvest each year, and a trusted turnkey company does it all for you. A great definition of durable wealth is having multiple diverse passive income streams. You have income streams that aren't closely correlated with each other. That more firmly anchors your financial freedom. And you're going to find out today what this investment looks like, what sort of returns you can expect, and you'll discover that dollar-wise, it's a pretty modest entry point for you to get in as well. Next week, Robert Kiyosaki returns to the show with me. He was last here about 9 months ago, so we'll catch up on the latest with the Rich Dad, Poor Dad author there. Then a few weeks after that, Robert Kiyosaki's real estate advisor, Ken McElroy, returns here to Get Rich Education for his third appearance. Today's guest, David Sewell, for years has offered an opportunity for investors to buy their own titled coffee farm parcels in Panama, which they're still thriving at and growing and expanding. And it's something that I've been an investor in myself for years. We've seen the prices of those agricultural half-acre coffee parcels appreciate from $10,000 per parcel up to $18,000 in a period of just 3 years, while they're providing me with cash flow from the annual coffee harvest at the same time. We know they're worth $18K because that's what the market is bearing. That's what new investors have to pay per coffee parcel to get in. David and his company now simultaneously offer an opportunity for investors like you and I to invest in agricultural cacao. Yes, cacao, C-A-C-A-O. That's grown on a tree, and it's the base ingredient of chocolate. That's offered in the stable Central American nation of Belize. And that's most of what we're going to discuss today. Well, why cacao and why Belize, and what are the benefits and the risks for an investor? Let's learn more from David Sewell. Today's guest is Managing Director of the Belize Cacao Consortium. He's also the founder of International Coffee Farms in Panama and broker-owner of a Remax branch in Panama. He has an extensive business background in private equity, venture capital, and offshore private wealth management, and his attention is really focused on offshore hard assets in Latin America that offer real growth potential with a sustainable income and turnkey management in place. He strongly believes in the future of specialty agriculture as one of the most likely asset classes to realize spectacular investment gains over the next 20 years. Welcome back to Get Rich Education, David Sewell.
Thanks very much, Keith. My pleasure to be here.
David joins me from Panama today. You've likely already heard of David because I've had him on the show here twice before talking about coffee farm investing in Panama in episodes 28 and 60. And I really like his business model, and a lot of people do, and his track record and his history of communication and trust has just been really good. In fact, a few years ago, I was one of the early investors in the Panama coffee farm parcels, partially because I received such a high-level referral to David, and it went well from there. So, David, let's just talk for a few minutes about what is going on. What is the latest with the Panama coffee farm investing? And just tell us a little bit more about the business philosophy and values that kind of go around that business model.
Everything's going very well here in Panama right now. We're in the middle of our second harvest. This is the high season of harvesting specialty coffee, high altitude coffee. January, February, March, and April are the big months. We're bringing in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of what they call cans of coffee, which are 30-pound containers, latas in Spanish, into our brand new beneficio, which is the wet and dry processing mill, to manage the creation of the coffee from the raw cherries that are picked off the trees. That's been a year in development. It's in place now. It's working beautifully. It's producing significantly high quality coffee that is traceable. And those people who are familiar with specialty coffee will understand traceability is extremely important in the handling of a coffee. Everybody wants to know where it came from, which mountain, who picked it, what time of the day, who handled it, how did it get processed, right to their cup. So everything from the seed all the way to the cup is handled now because of the new beneficio. The season is a really good, strong season. We've doubled the production from last year so far this year, and we still have 2 months to go. Everything's looking very, very nicely.
So really the business model there is where what you've done is you've gone and you've identified basically underperforming coffee farms that have produced kind of lower grade commercial coffee that comes in a big can, and you've come in and you've transitioned the farms by using the crop science with higher yield specialty coffee farms, and then you've divided those up into half-acre parcels at a time, and investors, me included, can come in and purchase those parcels 1 half-acre at a time and then enjoy the cash flow yield from the annual harvest there.
Absolutely correct. Perfect. Couldn't said it better myself.
So in Belize, with the cacao farming, is that model just pretty much exactly the same, except we're doing it with cacao, the base product for chocolate there in Belize, just like we are with the coffee farms in Panama?
That's right, Keith. It's exactly the same. If you took a global search and replace on the documentation that applies to coffee and substituted the word cacao for coffee, you'd have the business plan.
Okay.
It's based on chocolate manufacturing and cacao farming and cacao trading. There's a couple of extra revenue streams involved in this opportunity versus the coffee. Coffee is simply growing and processing and producing green coffee to be sold internationally as specialty coffee around the world. The cacao business in Belize is the same in buying underperforming commercial cacao or chocolate farms, if you want to call it that, and turning them into specialty cacao, blessed with the fact that Belize already has a very significant reputation for fine flavored and organic cacao in the southern part of the country. So we don't really have to do much with the terroir. The land is there. There's plenty of land and it's in really good shape. What we need to do is add capital and cacao science to the project. Management of the farms needs help. The people need training. They need to be able to clean and maintain their farms better than they do. They're being trained by a group of people we're associated with there to do that. We add the capital, the know-how. The social programs are the same. We want to be able to create an environment that will float all boats in the southern part of Belize where the cacao is grown. It's a very poor community. They don't live on very much money. They have very little capital to reinvest in their businesses. So by us coming in and with our business model and doing it the way we do, by buying farms and reemploying people and providing socially sustainable benefits to them, as well as economic benefits in helping them produce better and more higher quantity of cacao, we seem to be able to carry on the tradition or the example that we've used here in Panama successfully.
Okay, cacao is grown in tropical regions around the world. I really think of cacao, again, the base product for chocolate, really is growing in 4 main regions around the world. Number 1, you have Latin America. Secondly, you have sort of West Central Africa. Thirdly, you have part of India that produces cacao. And then the 4th place is in and near Indonesia. So you're starting to answer the why Belize question a little bit. Any more as to why Belize, of all places, to grow cacao?
You can take away the African territory out of the mix. They produce a largely commercial cacao. They don't have an industry where they have a specialty or a fine flavored cacao developed. They have a varietal of cacao that is different. They produce it differently. They follow the traditional coffee farmers model of one size fits all, put it at the farm gate, sell it to one large group like Hershey's or somebody like that that mix their chocolate from maybe hundreds of different locations into their chocolate bars and then don't sell specialty of a high value added chocolate. Different in Central and South America, and particularly different there are a few places in the Caribbean as well that have a specialty or a high value added fine flavor cacao business reputation, and they also have the climate and other requirements that are necessary to grow that fine flavored cacao, the terroir, the land, the varietals, the genetics of the plants, and the history. Belize is extremely well known for solely having fine flavored cacao. They don't have a commercial cacao production facility in the country, and they do very little at the commercial level. Virtually everything they grow has the capability, when properly maintained and managed, to be high quality, high value added, specialty, fine flavored, and organic cacao. Lots of adjectives, but they've got some extremely good product already there that just needs some help.
Okay, so that certainly answers more of the why Belize of all places question there, and you're starting to answer the why cacao of all crops as well. And I think of us as real estate investors, or just as investors in general, when we try to wrap our head around an investment and learn more about it, it really kind of falls back onto the old, supply and demand that Adam Smith popularized way back in 1776 in The Wealth of Nations, and it's still a fundamental principle for investors today, even here in the 21st century. And so when we're trying to understand an investment, I think a lot of it still comes down to just understanding supply and demand as fundamental drivers. So tell us about the cacao supply.
This cacao supply is woefully inadequate. I mean, it is abysmally inadequate compared to the demand. The supply can be there, but it is not there because the average Mayan indigenous farmer is farming 1.5 acres of cacao. He may have 25 or 30 acres that he'd been granted in many, many years ago, but he doesn't have the capital to plant it and farm it. So he's living on 1.5 acres or 2 acres of planted cacao, 300 or 400 trees on an acre, 600, 700 trees in total, a pound of cacao per tree at $1.30 a pound for his wet beans. You do the math, it doesn't add up to very much money to raise your family, never mind reinvest in seedlings and the labor to grow your farm. So it is a cycle, in my opinion, of poverty that they cannot get out of with those numbers. They need an advanced management science to help them maintain and grow what they've got, but they also need capital that can add to the amount of trees on their farm and the amount of acres that they're farming per farm so they can pull themselves out of this cycle. And that demand already exists, and demand is strong, and this demand is growing rapidly. Gourmet chocolate is the bee's knees. It's where it's at in chocolate. It's where specialty coffee is now, where 1 in every 2 cups in America is drunk as a specialty coffee. Gourmet chocolate is where it's at these days in the business, growing at a very rapid rate, in high demand all around the world. Cacao, the reputation of the cacao in Belize is excellent. They just can't produce. And if you want to give a number, 500 metric tons is the amount of fine flavored cacao that's on the books today that could be sold almost instantly, and they can produce somewhere in the order of 40 to 60 to 80 tons of that. The rest is going wanting by chocolatiers who are coming to Belize to taste the cacao, want the cacao. It's what they need to put in their products because of the quality of it. They just can't get it. So that shortage of supply is criminal, almost, really. It really is, with so many people demanding the cacao that they can't get. And that group is just a small group. There are lists and lists and lists of other chocolate manufacturers around the world that other groups of people in Belize that are involved in the business have, where people are demanding more and more of this fine flavored organic cacao to put in their gourmet chocolate. So the demand just for gourmet chocolate is one side. The demand for chocolate itself, all the things that go into chocolate powder, cacao powder, which is used in baking chocolate cakes and everything else, and all of the cacao nibs that are now being rapidly sold to health food stores and people who really want to eat properly and know where their food's coming from, superfoods like cacao nibs catching on around the world, all kinds of other cacao butter and products like that that are used in the confectionery business. Huge demand, virtually no supply whatsoever. Statistic from last year, Belize required 575 metric tons of this other chocolate products other than gourmet chocolate itself. And of that, they could only supply 15 metric tons. The rest is imported. The demand is still there. The chocolate confectioners still need it. The chocolate cakes are going to get made, but they have to import it. Now, that's just plainly ridiculous from a country like that has so much cacao opportunity. If the management, science, capital, and business infrastructure was in place to float their boat and allow it to be met internally, I mean, we can even help out the government with a balance of payments issue here.
Yeah, that certainly satisfactorily answers the supply-demand balance or imbalance question, so I can understand why you're there. And when I think about demand, I don't just think about demand in the near term. I think about what has sustainable demand. For example, it's far riskier to invest your money in a new app or a new social media platform, something that doesn't have proof of concept yet. But this has both proof of concept and you have pretty strong proof of an existing market. In fact, you already have relationships with buyers.
Correct. I mean, the list of fine chocolate manufacturers internationally and even locally, there's a half a dozen to a dozen people that produce gourmet chocolate in the country for export. And there are dozens and dozens of companies that have a seriously unfulfilled demand year after year after year after year in the thousands and thousands of metric tons that have not been able to be supplied. Part of the revenue streams that go along with the Belize Cacao Consortium offering that we're talking about today, not only is the P&E cacao plantation farming business, which is purely what it says, it's growing and farming cacao for sale, generally to be consumed inside of our own consortium, because we have a fine flavored artisanal chocolate shop that we will be consuming our own product in. But we also have a trading company established. The trading company will be buying beans from our own farm and buying beans from all of the other farmers that are available in the area that want to deal with us. And they will find a continual, sustainable market for their wet cacao to be sold to us, to be fermented and dried, and then sold on the open market to independent third-party purchasers, like many of these chocolatiers that are short of supply. So the fact that we will be able to not only grow our own, use our own internally, but we'll be able to take the other farmers who really need access to market, provide the capital that they need to help them grow their farms, but also provide them the outlet on a consistent basis for a long period of time that they can depend on to sell their product. And so that's going to be a significant improvement to the marketplace there alone, never mind us having our own farming operation and having our own end-use high five-star artisanal chocolate shop in Mahogany Bay Village.
Who are your other buyers?
The buyers are large chocolate companies that manufacture in Europe, are a large percentage of the buyers. There's a dozen or so people in Europe who handle probably 80% would be my guess, 80% of the required specialty chocolate or specialty cacao that they can't get their hands on. For example, one firm, and I just won't mention names of the firms particularly, but one firm, a large German chocolate manufacturer, has 500 different brands of chocolate that they produce. They are at the table every year looking for cacao and are only being satisfied with 10 or 15 or 20% of what they want from Belize. They are forced to go elsewhere. There are places to go elsewhere to get your chocolate or get your cacao, but we want it to come from Belize. So the Belizeans need the help, the leg up to be able to meet that inherent demand that's sitting there right now.
Yeah, well, I really think you're hitting on the right niche with both the specialty coffee and the specialty chocolate here, because Now, as geographies continue to, I guess, develop or westernize, it seems like they just continue to get greater taste and greater demand for these finer things. Well, when David and I come back, we're going to talk about what the investment opportunity looks like for you as the investor. Just how much does it cost to get in? What do your returns look like? When do you get paid? You're listening to Get Rich Education. Our guest is David Sewell. More when we come back. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Are you looking to invest in your first investment property or grow your existing inventory? Highlands Residential Mortgage can help, offering down payments as low as 15% and credit score requirements down to 620. Their streamlined process is designed to help investors close their loans quickly and without any surprises. You need someone who knows cash flowing real estate and can help guide you through the muddy waters of today's lending environment. So call Graham Parham today, toll free at 855-326-6802. The Parham team can help you purchase or refinance any of your 1 to 4 family investment properties.
NMLS number 195724, 12001 North Central Expressway, Suite 750, Dallas, Texas 75243. Equal housing lender, not licensed in all states.
As a lot of investors know, multifamily real estate has been one of the best asset classes to be invested in most of the last decade. While the great deals have been harder to find lately, there are still opportunities in select markets where savvy investors can get lots of appreciation and strong cash flow if you have a great team. Dave Zook, founder and president of The Real Asset Investor, and his team have been very active in the multifamily space in Memphis, Tennessee. On the heels of the Great Recession of 2009, Dave and his team quietly started acquiring multifamily assets, and in the last few years, he has syndicated over 2,000 apartment units, creating strong cash flow streams and big appreciation for lots of their investors. It's not too late to get involved. If you're an accredited investor and you would like to learn more about investing in great multifamily apartments with a world-class team, email Dave and his team at info@therealassetinvestor.com.
Hi, this is Tom Hopkins, and I can't tell you how smart you are to be with Get Rich Education and make these ideas you.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education with our guest, David Sewell of the Belize Cacao Consortium. So, David, you go in there and you go ahead and buy underperforming farms or even vacant land, and then you go ahead and turn it around with higher-end specialty cacao for chocolate, and you go ahead and produce that in a specialty grade where you can get that value-added premium for it. Just tell us a little bit more about what does a farm look like? And I'm sure a lot of our listeners don't even know what a cacao bush or tree looks like. So just tell us about the character of the farm physically.
We've acquired 3 farms so far in the best areas, I want to say the best areas of the southern part of Belize that are growing cacao. They don't look like much. Most of the areas we have acquired now is raw land. We will be planting most of the cacao that we're going to be growing on the farming operation, which is called P&E Cacao Plantation. So we have acquired one farm that has 25% of the farm planted in cacao. The others are going to be planted. We have created a nursery of our own, and the nursery is about 25,000 square feet of shaded property that has 120,000 seedlings growing on it as we speak today. They'll be ready to be put in the ground on the farms in May, June, July, depending on the timing of the rainy season. When you go to a cacao farm that's planted, you see trees that are somewhere between 12 and 20 feet tall at their maturity in year 3, 4, 5. They start out as little saplings in the ground, 6 inches out of the ground, grow quite quickly. In 2 to 3 years, you have crop, so the cash flow can begin more quickly in cacao than it can generally in coffee. You'll see trees that are 10 meters apart or 33 feet apart on a square, 33 feet apart in a line. Then the next line is 33 feet apart that way. They grow quite big and quite bushy. They're cut down and maintained, so manicured if you want, so that the wind can get through, the sun can get through, the air can get through, but they're fairly big. They're considerably bigger than the coffee tree, if any of you have been on our tours and seen those. And they take up a lot more space. So you generally get 400 or so trees on an acre. After they germinate and grow and start producing a crop in year 3, they will peak out in year 5 and 6, and they'll stay at peak for 20 or 25 years. They can grow a cacao tree, maintain it properly in good soil for 25 to 40 years. So they have a considerably longer life cycle than a coffee tree. So that's a basic farm. That's what it looks like. Trees are thin, skinny. They don't have a lot of leaves on them. They are not really bushy. They grow cacao pods all over their branches, and they grow cacao pods all over their trunks. So they can come from almost anywhere. It'll become a little flower. Little flower will become a little pistil, if you want to call it that, like the center of a harvested flower that you have in your home. In the center of that, it looks like that on the tree. That becomes a really tiny little baby pod, and that pod grows until it becomes the size of a small football. And it can weigh from anywhere to 3 to 5 pounds in its entirety. It grows once a year. It's harvested from September, October, depending on where the farm's located, until April or May. So we're in the coffee harvest here as well as in the cacao harvest in Belize at the same time. Once those pods are harvested from the tree, they're cracked on the site. The farmers will take a machete or more recently a wooden club and hold the pod. Imagine a 3 to 5 pound football in your hand, and they give it a whack or two and break off the pod on the outside, which falls to the ground. They just toss it into a pile and it becomes fertilizer. It just decomposes on the spot, fully organic. They take the wet beans that are in this, got a white mucus around them, put those in buckets, and then those buckets are bagged, and the bags are sold to a company like our Belize Cacao Traders, for example, or others at a certain price per pound. Wet, they're taken from there, moved to a central processing facility in a depot, which we are building our own as we speak. They're fermented in big, huge boxes that are made out of a particular kind of wood that grows naturally in Belize. The wood's necessary to make the flavor that develops inside the cacao bean while it's fermenting. It's a 6 to 7 day process. We can process 2,000 pounds a day or so in the fermenting racks that we have built. From there, once it's fermented over that 6 or 7 days, it goes into a drying system. And this is a hand-done drying system, a Mayan system that's been being used for 3,000 or 4,000 years, dried in the air, dried in the sun, hand-raked for 3 to 5 days, or as long as necessary, depending on the weather, to get the humidity, the moisture content in the bean to the exact right number so that it's dried properly. And once you get a fermented and dried bean, that's it. That's the raw chocolate. That's then sold to people who process chocolate, like chocolatiers all around the world, in that form. And then they take them and roast them to their own profiles and how they want for whatever they want to make for chocolate, and move on from there to process it in a gourmet fashion or in a commercial fashion. And they can mix that into with other beans from other sources to develop a flavor profile, put it in their bar, and come up with M&Ms or a Hershey bar, depending on what they want to do. So that's sort of what it looks like through the life cycle.
Well, that was very well explained. I really think that helps give us a better picture in our mind's eye of both physically what the parcels look like and then the physical operations. Because as investors and as real estate investors, we're interested in having something real and having something tangible and something where its value will never go to zero. And part of that is feeling good about the property ownership rights, since most of us as investors do live outside of Belize, many of us in the United States. And it's good news that in Belize they practice British common law, where you do have those pretty much similar or the same property rights like you have in the United States. But still, for an investor outside the country, and there's nothing out there that I would really call the perfect investment. The term perfect is really kind of overused or worn down. But since there is no perfect investment out there, there's got to be some problems. I mean, every investment has its positive attributes and its disadvantages as well. So for someone that lives outside Belize, what are some risks that they should be aware of, whether that's from pestilence or from weather or anything else? What are some risks?
There's a couple of risks that have to do with bugs, pestilence, and to do with cacao rot. So you can lose a cacao crop like you can lose a coffee crop if you don't pay attention. Nature knows what to do to grow the cherries on the either coffee tree or the pods on the cacao tree, but nature needs a leg up, some assistance, unless it's just going to produce those products that will drop on the ground and produce another tree, which is what the tree's nature is to survive itself. And it grows coffee cherries because it wants to survive. It doesn't really know that much about the fact that we're going to be drinking it down the road. So it does that in nature. There are a couple of things that can go wrong in a cacao farm. The good news and the really cool part about the whole thing is that the maintenance of those problems, the elimination virtually of those problems, is simple. You clear the property underneath the tree instead of letting it grow wild. It takes a guy that's used to the heat, like a Mayan Indian who's been working on cacao farms all his life, and a machete and time. And you get in there and you clear, and you clear, and you clear, and you clear. And that stops a lot of the problems. It virtually eliminates the bug problem. The rot problem is you maintain the trees. You manicure the trees. You chop off some of the branches. You chop off some of the leaves. You form the tree. You keep the other tree 10 meters away from growing into the two trees, so they have space, they have light, they have wind, they have sun, they have rain, and the rot doesn't come because the rot likes to live in dark, dank places where it can be left alone for a long period of time. If you eliminate that, put sun and wind and rain and rainbows on your farm, it eliminates that problem. So it's not anything that can't be handled with proper management science and proper effort on top of the farmers. And frankly, some of the effort has not been put in by some of the farmers. Many of them don't want to do it because it's hot, humid environment. It's hard work. It's lots of work. And they don't get very much money out of it. So, it's not a winning proposition for a lot of them. So we plan to make it such that they're going to want to do that. And the subset of farmers that exist now that really want to grow are the ones that are going to be able to survive and thrive. Other weather conditions can be an issue. The Belize is in the hurricane belt. So from time to time, they will see a hurricane. Fortunately, most of the hurricanes are in Belize City and north up to Mexico and Cancun. They're not 300 miles south in the Toledo region of the country next to Guatemala where all the cacao is grown. So they don't have much of a problem. And I think it was 2001 last time a hurricane came through the southern region that did any damage to the crops. And in a couple of years, those crops are all back. So not a big issue. Those are three of the things you think about, but I wouldn't think about them too hard.
Okay, so when an investor thinks about getting started there, I just know from investing with you in the Panama coffee farm parcels that one does not need to be accredited, and they don't need to qualify for a loan either because there aren't any loans for these, so one is paying cash for the property. So these investments really are ostensibly open to anyone. What is the minimum investment amount to get started?
The minimum investment amount for a half acre of a cacao farm parcel is $24,500 US.
And if you're listening to this show a few years down the road, that price might certainly have changed. These things do tend to potentially appreciate over time. What can an inspector invest for returns, and over what kind of time horizon are we looking at for cacao farming in Belize?
You can keep in mind that in the coffee business, when we started, the parcels were at $10,000 and they're now at $18,000. And that value is inherent in the quality of and quantity of the cash flow that's coming from being prepared for and coming from the farm. So I can't say for sure that cacao is going to follow the same path, but I bet you it will.
And let me just ask, those coffee farm parcels went from 10K to 18K over about what period of time? Because it wasn't long.
3 years.
That's a really nice appreciation rate on an unleveraged asset.
Once you add value, like in any other real estate business where you're rehabbing a house or flipping something, once you add value, the value is in the cash flow. And then the cash flow is potentially much larger and is much larger as we grow these farms and develop these farms, whether it be coffee or cacao. So that inherent value add has a multiple on the bottom line. As that bottom line increases, it stands to reason that the value of the parcel will increase. So what we've done is we've taken on top of the capital gain that's possible in the farm parcels is the operational income. And that's simply from the amount of cacao grown times the price we're going to get for that cacao to generate a revenue. We forecast those revenues over a 20-year period to create a pretty standard internal rate of return calculation with an appropriate discount rate to reflect the business risk of the model, which is fairly low. That discounted cash flow model over 20 years produces an IRR, or an average annual yield, of around 11 to 12%. And you can expect the cash flow in this opportunity to be a little quicker than coffee because we have multiple revenue streams. Cacao grows a little quicker, so 2 to 3 years from planting these saplings P&E will be producing revenue from cacao sales, where in coffee it's 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years, depending on the varietal. So it's a little quicker there. And then you have two other revenue streams, one from the Belize cacao traders buying and trading operation, which will be buying beans this season, buying them this weekend, and buying them next weekend, and fermenting and drying those beans and selling them to third-party people. So there's going to be a little bit of a revenue stream developed quickly there. And then the mahogany chocolate business, the 5-star artisanal shop in the Mahogany Bay Village, will be producing chocolate for sales to the people staying in the Hilton come this summer, and that will generate independent revenue and profit sharing as well. So there's two other streams. So we've been forecasting the initial cash flows to begin in about 12 to 15 months for cacao.
So the investor can expect that first cash flow distribution about 12 to 15 months after investment. Each half-acre parcel costs currently $24,500. So, for example, if someone wanted to buy 3, that would be $73,500 for 3 1/2-acre parcels. And then what about the use of IRA funds? Is this eligible for using one's individual retirement account funds for investment?
Absolutely. You don't have to be an accredited investor to do this because you're simply buying real estate. So you're becoming a deeded parcel owner of a half-acre parcel in a cacao farm. So the accreditation issue is not pertinent. And IRA funds are perfectly allowable in Belize to register the title in the name of the custodian, FBO the IRA. We don't believe you need to go to the LLC formation part inside your IRA. You can just do it straight in your IRA. So IRA funds are available, and this is a long-term legacy patient investment in agriculture and in nature, so it's perfect for long-term patient money.
All right. And as prudent investors that are investing for the long term, we'd like to begin with the end in mind. And with that in mind, these type of investments typically aren't very prudent for farm flippers because, for one thing, the returns kind of ramp up over time as typically the crop has a lower yield in those early years just because they're not as mature and well developed. So tell us a little bit more about how the early returns compare with later projected returns.
The returns will start in 12 to 15 months, the first year or two, little dribbles. It's not very much, but it'll come. Once farms kick in 2 and 3 and 4 years, those returns go quite quickly to double digits annually. And then they double again beyond that, so that you could be seeing 20, 25, even higher percent returns a year, 7, 8 years down the road, and going on in perpetuity for your current family and then as a legacy investment for your heirs. The numbers are significant. You'll want to take a really good, strong look at selling a parcel that's turning 20 or 22 or 25% a year before you do that. You can do that. You own it. It's yours. You can do what you want with it. But we would like to give you a psychiatric examination before you do that. We all know as professional investors that it's not selling the asset that's the issue. It's reinvesting at the same rate or better. And those kind of rates are pretty rare to be able to find. So once you've had the patience to go through the early stages and hang in there, you should never even think about this unless you got a 5 to 7 year time horizon minimum. You're just not going to see a return on the capital invested in the farms and in those other two businesses in a short term. So it's not something for a get rich quick scheme. It's not to come into if you think you're going to need to flip this in 5 or 6 years. Again, I said you can. It's yours. You do what you want with it. We will have a first right of refusal on that property. We're going to take it off your hands and keep it for ourselves, place it with another investor that wants those kind of cash flows. And that first right of refusal is 30 days long. If we don't exercise it, then you can do whatever you want with it to whomever you want at whatever price you want. But it's pretty certain that we're going to be taking it off your hands because we don't want you selling it off to some Chinese sock manufacturer that's going to be setting up an operation in the middle of our cacao farm. That's the philosophy behind that. But you certainly can put cash into it. You can put IRA money into it. You can do what you want with it. But we strongly advise that you take a long-term view.
Yeah, that sure is the way to think about it. So in summary, let's just quickly tick off and check off some boxes here as to what the attributes of the investment are that make it fit for an investor and basically why you're there.
You're in a proven industry. It's a proven product. It's a $98 billion with a B industry, $100 billion industry. There aren't lots of those around. It's a proven product. It's chocolate. It's not something we have to reinvent the wheel. It's not a widget we're making in San Jose, California that nobody knows whether it'll be taken up by the market or not. So it's proven. It's in high demand. It's chocolate again. And the anecdotal evidence for an investor who wants to go out and understand the chocolate market, I mean, you can spend the rest of your life on the internet not understanding all of it, but it's blatantly obvious where the demand is and how fast it's growing. And the supply is low. And the data is included in some of the documentation that you can receive from us while you're doing your due diligence, so you can understand that, and then you can go further. So there's a proven product that's in high demand with a very low supply. Your capital is secure. It's a deeded parcel in a titled cacao farm in a legitimate country like Belize with proper legal systems, property rights, proper registration systems, a stable government, a stable environment. So you have security of your capital. It's offshore, it's safe, it's land, it's not going anywhere, it's secure, it's private. If you're an American, under the current rules of FATCA, you don't have to report the ownership of offshore real estate if it's held in your own name. And I think that it's dependable, because so your capital is very secure based on all those. On top of that, you don't have to do anything. It's professionally managed for you on a turnkey basis by our people, same way as we do coffee. There is no fee built into the returns. We're not taking any money out to do the turnkey management. And finally, it's sustainable. This income comes from multiple revenue sources. So it comes from chocolate, it comes from cacao trading, and it comes from cacao farming. So there's multiple revenue sources for many years to come, and it's a legacy investment for your heirs. And then finally, based on all of those economic parameters, there's a social parameter that is extremely important, equally as important in our opinion, where we help improve the lives of the cacao farmers and even the poor chocolate workers that work in the industry that don't get paid very much, by providing them some living wages, medical and pension benefits, better working conditions, better sleeping conditions, better everything conditions, so they can be employed in good, honest work. And all of us know that some of these countries in the area of Caribbean, Central America, South America don't always have work that's totally honest. We want to make sure we move people away from doing what they might do to feed their families to doing what they can do, floating their own boats in a legit business that's going to make everybody better off. Those are some of the reasons.
Yeah, that socially sustainable component sure is important. And David offers tours of the Belize cacao farms, and I went on their first ever tour over in Panama on the Panama coffee farm parcels, where David owns International Coffee Farms. And it really was a first-rate experience. And your first tour came off so well, David, it really made me think, wow, I mean, if these guys can logistically coordinate a tour like this, there's probably a pretty good chance that they've really got their act together with the investment too. So you can go ahead and attend one of those tours, whether you're currently an investor in the Belize cacao farms or not. So, David, let our listeners know how they can get a free report to find out more about cacao farming in Belize.
Well, if you want to get the report and do all your own due diligence, just go to getricheducation.com/chocolate, and the report will be in your inbox very, very quickly.
And this stuff works. I don't know how much more plainly I can say it, but I have received a wire transfer from my cash flowing Panama coffee farm parcel. David Sewell, thanks so much for coming back on to Get Rich Education.
My absolute pleasure, Keith. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, well, great job from David. I mentioned near the beginning of the show that a great definition of durable wealth is having multiple diverse passive income streams. You have income streams that are not closely correlated with each other. Well, the cacao trees, they show up every day and they know what to do. It's not like a tenant damages your property or a tenant loses their job and they can't pay the rent, or one local economy that your property is in slides downhill in a recession and you have occupancy problems. None of those things can happen here with Belize cacao investing. In most cases, the trees are just going to continue to grow and fruit. And, you know, the trees, they don't know whether the stock market will be up or down this year. The trees won't know if the S&P 500 dips 20% next year or what the Fed does with interest rate policy. The trees don't have any idea about what's going on in the United States residential income property market. They just continue to grow. See, that's the value of having multiple diverse income streams right there. Income streams that are uncorrelated with each other. With cacao investing, you've limited the, we'll call it perishability risk with this crop. maybe that's not the best way to say it. I don't even know if perishability is a word, but my point is, if this crop were bananas or mangoes or lettuce, it would be more perishable before or after harvest, and it would also be fragile during transport, and you largely just don't have that risk with cacao. Now, we have listeners in 179 countries, but just say, for example, you live in the United States like I do, and you might have a question of, I guess, nationalism when it comes to cacao investing, chocolate investing, saying that, you only want to invest in something domestically sourced. And I sure can appreciate that to some extent. I feel better when I see a made in the USA label on a product that I buy. But you've got to consider that growing cacao beans in the United States commercially, that's just not even viable for a lot of reasons, mostly climatic ones. So you really have to cross a national border if you want to invest in cacao. And, I guess if one were strictly patriotic or nationalistic, then you couldn't even eat chocolate either, or a lot of other products for that matter, because your consumption is driving demand for a product outside of your own nation's borders. So it's increasingly difficult, if not completely impossible, to be a consumer of products and services that are only sourced inside the borders of your home country. The world is increasingly globalized, and you're part of an interconnected economy no matter what anyway, and that's really not going to change. When it comes to finding a trusted company, with David's company in the Panama coffee farm parcels, I can't really even think of what more I could ask from my provider as an investor. They provide drone footage of the farms. They're quite communicative in sending plenty of ongoing progress emails that are informative and basically just some of the most interesting emails that I get. David touched on the socially sustainable benefits. The Mayans indigenous to that area are doing the farming, and they're helping build the cacao nursery and buttress the labor force. One indigenous member there is going to become their regional farming director. So when the Belize Cacao Consortium purchases a farm and starts improving it, they cooperate with the locals, retaining them and often training them to produce the crop. And us as investors and the farm managers make sure that we take good care of them, just like we've done with the coffee farm parcels in Panama, where we've ensured that the workers now have 5-inch mattresses instead of wooden boards to sleep on, and that they are now provided with gas stoves instead of those smoke-producing wood fires that were causing health problems for workers' families. You have an opportunity to do some good here while you're being a profiteer. And I've been on the ground and I've walked inside those indigenous workers' homes myself with David, and I've seen those improvements, and I feel good about that. I know that I'm supporting some good in the world, so I really don't even know what more I could ask for from a provider. And I travel internationally to look at investments, and well, I don't just have anyone come on here and talk about what they're offering, but David Sewell and his co-founder, Darren Doyle, are quality and trusted business people that I'm proud to say have been a part of my team for years. Currently, they have a pretty finite offering of 196 half-acre cacao parcels there in Belize. Consider, too, that in turnkey income property markets in the United States, inventory is tight in a lot of these markets, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for a property to shake free. Here with the cacao parcels, there is some room now, but I don't know how long it's going to be there, and I doubt that the price will ever be this low again. So you might be able to put your money to work sooner here than you can elsewhere and speed up your velocity of money. At the least, consider reading their very informative report about creating cash flow from cacao farming, and that way you'll have David's and his company's contact information too in case you have any questions. Again, that report, which is a really good quick read, is prepared for you at getricheducation.com/chocolate. Thanks again to David Sewell. Next week, I'll return with Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki. You know that we're going to help you build your wealth. Until then, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to Get Rich Education, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
Cash flow real estate investors nationwide and worldwide, this is Get Rich Education's Keith Weinhold. Forbes has rated Memphis, Tennessee as the #1 cash flowing market in the world. Our good friends at Mid-South Homebuyers have been Memphis's premier turnkey real estate provider for 14 years with a stellar reputation and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Owner Terry Kerr was born and raised in Memphis. Yeah, he knows the market and has renovated and sold over 1,000 houses in the Memphis area. Find out what their many repeat buyers already know. Their houses are completely renovated, even come with a 1-year builder's warranty and a lifelong rental guarantee. They're a perfect fit for the first-time out-of-state investor or the seasoned investor diversifying their portfolio. Mid-South Homebuyers' friendly staff makes investing easy. Learn more at midsouthhomebuyers.com or give them a call at 901-217-HOME. The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.